Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 882, August the 30th, 2019, Friday. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Okay, so obviously the big story yesterday was the IG releasing the Comey report, which was of course an 83-page report, and it shows that Comey violated department and FBI policies regarding the retention, handling, and dissemination of FBI records and information. And, of course, Barr has already made the decision not to prosecute. So for me, it was kind of anticlimactic because, yeah, I mean, I heard in the morning when I went on break, I heard that the report had been, released. We were expecting it because we heard the day before that would likely happen. But I thought, well, Barr has already looked at it and already decided not to prosecute. And we pretty much understand what had happened. Now it gets into a lot more detail, and to be honest with you, what I've learned, and I haven't had a lot of time to review it, but probably mostly what I learned, the most important thing I learned came from an article written by Byron York at the Washington Examiner, which I'll be getting into momentarily, which is what I think is the real most damning information that came out above and beyond just these leaks of these so-called Comey memos. But it did not take long for Comey to tweet. In fact, his tweet came out at 10:01 a.m. Now that is literally almost the same time that it was announced that the report had been released. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us that obviously James Comey probably either had been told exactly what was in the report, maybe he had received notes from the report, maybe he had the report already. Comey certainly knew what was in that report because at the same time that the report's released, within minutes, he sends out the following tweets. Listen to this. You talk about an arrogant son of a bitch. Here is Comey's first tweet. And the two tweets came one right after the other. The first one, and I kind of look at these two tweets as Comey taunting, literally taunting the Department of Justice, Attorney General Barr, Trump, and his supporters and journalists who've been following the story, and his critics. He's taunting us. So the first tweet, he says, the DOJ Inspector General found no evidence that Comey or his attorneys released any of the classified information contained in any way of the memos to members of the media. I don't need a public apology from those who defamed me, but a quick message with a sorry we lied about you would be nice. Then, immediately after that, probably the same tweet, also at 10:01, he says, let me see if I got that. Yes. The next tweet that follows that, he says, and to all of those who've spent 2 years talking about me going to jail or being a liar and a leaker, ask yourselves why you still trust people who gave you bad info for so long, including the president. Both of these sent at about 10:01 a.m., which is about the time that they were released. In other words, Comey didn't have time to read through this 83-page report, but yet he felt perfectly confident to come out and make these tweets, which are quite arrogant and very, I guess you would say, taunting. He's taunting Trump. He's taunting the DOJ, taunting his critics in these types of statements. I mean, it's the height of arrogance. I've never seen anything quite like it. He is 100% confident that he is going to be getting off the hook for his crimes. Now, he did focus mostly on the memo part of it, and if you look at the memo part of it, you can kind of see at a rough glance why Barr probably chose not to prosecute, because it's kind of iffy. Is it classified? Is it not classified? But when you dig into the details about what was classified and wasn't classified, and why it wasn't classified. And when you ask an even bigger question, I guess what bothers me about the way that Horowitz, and keep in mind, Horowitz and Comey are buds. They are buds. They served together at the Southern District of New York as attorneys in the Southern District of New York for about 6 years together. So Huckleberry Horowitz and Comey are buds. But what Horowitz is missing here is the context. Why did Comey leak these memos, classified or not? Why did he do it? What was his motive? What was his intent? That is what is important here. And yet he seems to sail right over that. But that's extremely important. And then Horowitz knows, because he goes on to describe it in the report, as to why those memos were not classified, or that they were classified the way that they were. And not just that, but there's more to all that. The people who were determining the classification were the very people who were the coup plotters, both working on the first to try to stop Trump from being elected when he was a candidate. Then they were the people working the counterintelligence operation against him. Then they were the people who were trying to carry out the coup once he was elected. They were all went on to become part of the Mueller team. We're talking about Strzok, Page, and those people. Also, you had involved in this Rybicki, and of course, Andy McCabe. But what's even more sinister about this is he goes into another part in the report, and this is what Byron York focuses on. He goes into the part talking about the Trump Tower meeting and how that was not what it was sold to be, not what we believed it to be at this point. What has been sold up to this point is that they went to Brennan and Clapper and Comey, go to Trump Tower on January 6th of 2017 to tell Trump, to brief him about two things. Number one, Russia's meddling in the election, and then number two, and this is where it was a private meeting between Comey and Trump, where Comey tells Trump about the Steele dossier information stuff, but he doesn't describe it as Steele dossier information or anything like that. He just talks about the PP-Gate story. That's the only thing he really talks about. And now we find out what a sinister plot that was. That was a plot. That was part of the counterintelligence operation. The briefing at Trump Tower was part of the counterintelligence operation, and that is disclosed in these 83 pages. Not only that, but the purpose was for Comey to tell Trump and then to pay very close attention to his response. And then Comey, so what Comey does, and what the plan was, Comey tells Trump, and then as soon as he gets that, he does that, he goes out, he leaves Trump Tower, hops in his FBI vehicle, which has already got a computer fired up and ready to go, and he begins typing about trying to recall everything he said and everything Trump said in the meeting. And the purpose of which was to take Trump's response and to psychologically analyze it from a criminal point of view, and to try to determine if there was anything there that could be used in the counterintelligence operation. The meeting at Trump Tower, Comey's meeting at Trump Tower with Trump, was part of the counterintelligence operation. But get this. The memos that Comey put together of the 7 of the 9 times that he spoke with Trump, the memos themselves were purposely rendered in a declassified status because they knew that they were going to use them. And the people who determined that, McCabe, Strzok, Page, and Rybicki. But here's where it gets even more sinister. They only declassified the notes, Comey's notes with Trump, so that could be released publicly by Comey to his friend Daniel Richman, who would then leak it to the New York Times. That was the plot all along, as well as to get Trump's response to, psychoanalyze it to determine if it showed his guilt or what have you. But more importantly, what they did classify and what they did lock away to try to keep anyone from ever looking at, and they even went to the extent of taking this information, these notes, and they locked them up in Rybicki's office. And what we're talking about is the meeting notes between Comey, McCabe, Strzok, Page, Rybicki, likely Brennan, Clapper, when they're discussing setting up this plot. The discussions about having Clapper and Comey and Brennan go to Trump Tower to brief Trump, and specifically Comey to brief Trump alone on the PP-Gate story, was all a plot, part of the counterintelligence operation. And that information they hid and classified and would never let anybody look at. They wouldn't let, Congress requested all this sort of stuff. They never got it. And they even locked it up in Rybicki's office. That way, if something happened to Comey, because they thought he may get fired, then they knew that someone would come in and take possession and inventory of all of Comey's stuff and get all his notes and everything else. They didn't want that discovered. So they locked it up in Rybicki's drawer to keep it away from investigators or anyone getting their hands on it. This would have been the notes and the so-called memos of this group of sinister plotters, the coup plotters, setting up. It's the notes of how they're discussing how they're going to set up Trump as part of this counterintelligence operation. And so once Comey gets back into his vehicle there, his FBI vehicle, after leaving Trump Tower, he is typing into his computer, and in real time, back at FBI office, you have McCabe, Strzok, Page, and Rybicki, who were, I guess, able to see what Comey's typing, and they're getting this information about what Comey is typing in, about his recounting of the meeting he had just had with Trump. And this is all going into their information, which is also locked away and kept away from investigators or members of Congress who are requesting these things, or anyone who may be investigating. But somehow Horowitz manages to get his hands on it, and it's all in the 83-page report. The entire event of Comey going to Trump Tower on January 6, 2017 to brief Trump on the so-called Russians involved in the election and the PP-Gate story was all part of the counterintelligence operation, and Comey was feeding every bit of that information he got right back to the individuals who were working the counterintelligence operation against Trump. My oh my. It's right there in the report. Horowitz unearths it. Barr read it and chose not to prosecute. Back to what I said before. It's not so much these memos. And of course now we know why that they were declassified. They were declassified by McCabe and Strzok and Page and Rybicki for the very purpose that they could be leaked. And the notes that describe the setup were kept classified, hidden. Barr and Horowitz know this. It's in the report. Yet they choose not to prosecute. It wasn't just Comey innocently leaking information about a conversation he had with Trump to Daniel Richman so he could leak it to the New York Times. It was much, much more than that. It was part of the overall coup plot. It was part of the counterintelligence operation. Not only that, in that meeting, Comey again, we learn, tells Trump straight up at the very beginning of the meeting, Mr. President, you're not under investigation. When in fact, Comey is there as part of the counterintelligence operation against Trump. He's blatantly lying right to his face. So after Comey tweets out, right after the report comes out, far too soon for him to have read it. So clearly Comey had advanced knowledge of what was in that report. Whether his attorneys got it from Horowitz, whether someone leaked it to him, I'm not really sure. But 10:01 a.m. is the timing on Comey's tweets, and that is less than an hour after it became public knowledge that the report had been released. And Comey is tweeting about it. Never had time to read it. Yet he sends out this arrogant tweet, literally taunting you, me, Trump, Barr, you name it. So then, right after Comey's tweets, then Trump, at about 2 o'clock, about 4 hours later, tweets out, "Perhaps never in the history of our country has someone been more thoroughly disgraced and excoriated than James Comey in the just released IG report. He should be ashamed of himself." Then we get a tweet from Rodenstein, who Rodenstein essentially answers Comey's tweet with a link to a letter that he sent Charles Grassley after Comey had exonerated the rotten Reverend Clinton. And the letter, of course, talks about the importance of following policies and procedures. Then we get Mr. Potato Head. You know, he couldn't stay out of the fray. He jumps in and he tweets out to Trump's tweet. He says, "Jim Comey is far more decent, ethical, honest, competent, and patriotic than you could ever hope to be. It is only because the AG and Republican," he says, "it's only because the AG, the Attorney General, and Republican senators refuse to put country above party that you know are not in a world of trouble and hurt, but their protective cocoon is only temporary." Two things jump out at me about this tweet. Number one, he specifically names Attorney General Barr. It is only because the Attorney General and Republican senators refuse to put country above party? Here's AG Barr. Here's Brennan telling AG Barr that he's putting party above country. Now, Barr is a guy who takes himself pretty seriously. And here's Brennan, knowing good and well that Barr is investigating Brennan. We're told he is, Durham. And Brennan has the brass balls to make a comment like this about the guy who can put his ass in jail. These guys are awfully arrogant. You know what I mean? Too arrogant. And then, the last sentence, "But their protective cocoon is only temporary." Where have we heard the term protective cocoon? Any of you know? Well, if you're a JFK researcher, you know. Because protective cocoon was a very popularly used term shortly after the Kennedy assassination, when a lot of people were asking questions about the Secret Service protection. Because the Secret Service, as they left the airport and headed to Dealey Plaza, the Secret Service agents who were supposed to be riding on the back of the car, who would protect the president from a shot coming from the rear, were not able to take their normal positions. They did initially jump on their positions on the back of the car, and then the lead Secret Service agent told them to jump off the car. And they were held back at the airport. Kennedy went through Dealey Plaza without his Secret Service on the back of the car where they should have been. That is described as the protective cocoon. The motorcade was supposed to have a protective cocoon. You were supposed to have the two guys on the back. You were supposed to have two motorcycle cops up around with the two front wheels of the car. You're supposed to have two motorcycle cops right behind them, and two motorcycle cops about where the rear wheels are, and then you're supposed to have the two riding on the back. If you go back and look at the video of Kennedy, his limousine coming down into Dealey Plaza, you will see that the motorcycles are completely pulled all the way back, at least 10 feet from the rear of the car. There are no motorcycles to the front, none to the side, and the two Secret Service agents who were supposed to be on the back of the car are not there. The term that was widely used back in those days about the presidential motorcade and how they protect it was referred to as the protective cocoon. John Brennan uses that sentence at the end of his tweet. But their protective cocoon is only temporary. Why are these guys so fucking arrogant? What do they know? You know what I think? I think that they are all going to use the excuse that everything that they were doing, and the reason why it's all justified, everything that they did, was because it was part of the counterintelligence operation and it had to be protected. That's why they had to lie. That's why they had to cheat. That's why they had to do all the things they did. Remember, Comey was supposed to brief the Congress on sensitive investigations every 3 months, but he never did. All the things that they were supposed to do to follow protocol, they never did. Why? They're going to say because it was such a matter of great national security, such a sensitive issue, it was part of the counterintelligence operation, and they could not do anything that would expose the counterintelligence operation, so therefore everything they did was to protect the counterintelligence operation. That is what they're going to hide behind. That is why Susan Rice wrote the cover your ass letter on the last day in the White House. Everything by the book. And when she said, we have to make sure that that when we leave the White House today and Trump comes in, that this continues. So they had to set the stage, they had to set the plans, make the plans, so that once Trump got in, that the counterintelligence operation would not be able to be stopped, that it would continue. And they're going to say that everything they did to protect the counterintelligence operation. That is what they're banking on. That is why they're so confident, because they believe they can sell it. You have got to be pretty confident or pretty stupid to make a comment like Brennan made about the Attorney General when he's the guy that's investigating you right now. He can put you in jail for a long ass time. And yet you're going to send out a tweet and suggest that he is, in fact, state that he is putting party above country? That's a direct attack on the integrity of the Attorney General, Barr, who places a lot of emphasis on his own personal integrity. And Brennan's going to go after him directly like that? And then at the end, he's going to drop this phrase, but their protective cocoon is only temporary? Knowing exactly, Brennan knows exactly what that term protective cocoon means. It means the protection around the president. And I don't mean political. When the phrase was created, it wasn't political. It was about protecting a presidential motorcade, to create a protective cocoon. That is what the term means. And Brennan knows it. I highly recommend that you read Byron York in the Washington Examiner. I highly recommend you read the article in the Washington Examiner by Byron York. John Solomon was on Sean Hannity the night before, and he said that Trump is now setting up something called the Office of Transparency to override all these agencies, FBI, DOJ, ODNI, who are refusing to produce the documents or produce the documents he ordered declassified. So Trump is now going to run it from the White House. And it's going to be called the Office of Transparency. And he apparently is going to have this rolled out next week. That's the plan. Let's see if it actually happens. John Solomon also says that there are going to be 3 documents coming out. They're going to be quite explosive. The first one will be letters between Obama and the Iranians, where he promised that Iran could continue uranium enrichment. And that would have been when the Rotten Reverend Clinton was Secretary of State. The second documents will be intelligence reports that showed that there were red flags presented to the committee that approved the Uranium One deal. The next set of documents are 3 documents that show what the FBI wanted to look at the end of the Rotten Reverend Clinton investigation, but were prevented from seeing by the Department of Justice, and I assume that's the DOJ NSD. We will see. We will see. Because my gut is starting to tell me that there's something going on here, and I don't like it. Here we are. The midterm elections were quite a while back, right? 2020 is not that far away. It looks to me like the whole crew, and I unfortunately have to sadly say that would include at this point, unless I see something different, the AG and the whole 9 yards, Barr, Durham, the whole 9 yards, Lindsey Graham, you name it, the whole establishment, they appear to be playing run the clock out. They're trying to go to 2020. They're trying to drag this thing out to 2020. If we don't get some indictments, if we don't get some actual, meat on the bone in the next few months, it ain't going to happen by 2020. These things take time. If an indictment is launched today against any of the coup plotters, it'll be a couple weeks before they get their first day in court. Then it will be months before the trial starts. It will be months and months and months going on. It will literally be 2020 before a single person is actually held accountable because of where we are on the calendar. These things drag out for a long time. The idea that this was all going to be uncovered and exposed prior to 2020, at this point, look at the calendar. It ain't going to happen. There isn't time. Unless Durham and Barr have some sort of a super secret plan. I'm starting to have my doubts. I've spent way too long, so much other news to cover today, and I spent way too long on where I've been, so I'm going to try to squeeze this last bit in the last 6 or 7 minutes that I have. It's important to note, just as I've been saying for months and months, that at some point, and I suspected it would be towards September and then in October, because I think the Rotten Reverend Clinton wants to jump in this thing somewhere around the end of October. Not that she wants to jump in. She didn't want to go through debates, doesn't want to go through primaries either, and doesn't even want to campaign. She don't want to run for president. She just wants to be the president, okay? So she needs a draft Hillary campaign. But first she needs to take out Biden. As I've been saying for weeks and weeks and weeks, at some point, when Biden is looking pretty weak and he's just needing a little shove, the Rotten Reverend Clinton's allies will make the phone call. And once they do, the entire media will start to turn on Biden. And they will hammer him for 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever it takes, until he's done. They will beat him to death. And he will be done. And what will follow that? Shortly after that, or just as it's tailing off, just as it becomes obvious that Biden is going to be pushed out, then the Rotten Reverend Clinton, the draft Hillary campaign will begin full force. Draft Hillary. Oh, Biden's gone. What are we going to do now? Draft Hillary. I'm telling you, this has been the plot for a long time. So what do we have? We have this story. A Washington Post, a Clinton ally, a Hillary Clinton ally, the Washington Post, writes a major, brutal hit piece on Biden. And the hit piece is titled, "As he campaigns for president, Joe Biden tells a moving but fake war story." It's a brutal takedown. That does not happen. The Washington Post does not write a brutal takedown story like that unless it comes from the tippy top. And the tippy top of the DNC is the Rotten Reverend Clinton and her allies. So Biden tells a story about a 4-star general that he said had asked him to travel to Afghanistan back when he was vice president. His task? To award a heroic Navy captain a medal. Biden said the captain had rappelled into a 60-foot ravine to recover the body of a slain soldier. And as he went to pin the medal on the captain told Biden, "Sir, I don't want the damn thing." And Biden then says, after telling the story, "This is the God's truth. my word as a Biden. And as the Washington Post points out, nearly every detail of Biden's story is incorrect. Number one, Biden's visit was not as the VP, but as a senator. Number two, the soldier was an E4, a specialist, not a captain. He was a 20-year-old guy. Number three, the soldier in question is named Kyle White, and he has never had a medal pinned on him by Biden. Next, Obama pinned the medal on White 6 years after Biden's visit. So in 3 minutes, Biden got the time period, the location, the heroic act, the type of medal, the military branch, the rank of the recipient wrong, as well as his own role in the ceremony. So this is where it begins, the takedown. 3 to 4 weeks of this kind of stuff coming from the, and you can bet now this will be followed by the New York Times, the the Wall Street Journal. You'll start to see on all the popular liberal websites hit pieces on Biden coming day after day after day until 3 or 4 weeks from now he is done. And this has got to be coming from the top, because all these people take their marching orders from the DNC. They're linked. And who runs the DNC? Who is the DNC? The Clintons. Just as I've been saying. And just about the time that it becomes very obvious, as Biden has been beat down, then you'll start to see the beginnings of the draft Hillary campaign. She doesn't want to run. She doesn't want to be in the primary. She doesn't even want to, certainly in the debates. She wants to be president, but she doesn't want to run. She's going to try to be a fake AstroTurf, a fake draft Hillary campaign, where she's going to say, well, I really don't want to go through all that, but, you know, if you think you really want me, then put me on the ballot. Put me on the ballot. And then she'll have her surrogates go out and do all the hard work, while she sits on her fat ass in the Hamptons and laughs hard, while she suckers her party once again. Eric Trump has said that his company will be taking legal action against MSNBC and Lawrence O'Donnell for that fake news story. In case you didn't hear about this, Lawrence O'Donnell did a story where he said that in the process of getting the Deutsche Bank records, Trump's Deutsche Bank financial records, that Deutsche Bank also has a lot of Trump tax returns. And the fake news story that O'Donnell goes into is, he says that a source told him that Trump had co-signers for loans, and these co-signers were Russian oligarchs. Totally corroborated, uncorroborated, would not give the name of the source, and then he's later forced to come out and apologize, retract the story, and say his source has never even seen any of this material. Well, that apparently was a little bit too much for Eric Trump, and he has basically stated that yes, they will be taking legal action against MSNBC and Lawrence O'Donnell, and they will win, and they will win big. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do that to a private business. As much as they want to attack Trump, his sons are still running the Trump Corporation, and this was, you know, you can't do this. You couldn't do this to Apple. You couldn't do this to Walmart. You can't do this to Sprint. You couldn't do this. You cannot go out and run a story like that and say, yeah, you know, so-and-so is hooked up with Russian oligarchs or whatever, and foul play. You can't make these accusations, especially as a news broadcaster, and run a story like that. It's a slander. It's a hard slander, and it's going to cost MSNBC a lot of money and maybe cost O'Donnell his job. And it should. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. You guys have a good evening. Read that Washington Examiner story by Byron York. See you guys. Bye.